Hey guys, it's Bro You Whack, and the question that is on everybody's mind at this point is when is our daddy Jeff coming back to the store with some milk? Overwatch 2. A couple of days ago, my other legal father figure, Stylosa, tweeted about Overwatch 2 and how it was kind of a poor idea of how they announced Overwatch 2 over 7 months ago and then not follow it up with anything. No talks, no any further announcements, nothing. And then here comes your boy chiming in, as always, saying that I thought it would have been a cool idea if Overwatch 2's campaign mission that was playable at BlizzCon could have been a part of the Archives event, just something to lead into Overwatch 2. But then after these tweets went up, a couple hours later, I got in a phone call with someone who actually used to work at Blizzard, and we talked about normal things before they brought up these two tweets, and they kind of enlightened me on not necessarily how we are wrong, but how we're kind of missing the bigger picture when talking about Overwatch 2 and why it's not releasing yet. While they don't work at Blizzard anymore, and while they don't have any insight on Overwatch 2 and why it's not releasing, they were able to give me insight on just how Blizzard functions as a company and when it comes to them developing video games. Something that I don't think anybody ever will really understand until you work for Blizzard. And that's why it inspired today's video, because if I'm able to understand and have a little bit more of appreciation for how Blizzard makes video games, then hopefully you can too. If anything, just have a little bit more patience for Overwatch 2. And while I don't know everything or really anything that you don't already know when talking about Overwatch 2, I've come to three possible reasons, three different layers as to why Overwatch 2 is taking as long as it is to not only release, but even just talk about. And those three things are Blizzard's culture when it comes to making video games, the thing that's going on in the world, which I don't want to say directly because I don't want this video demonetized, you know what I'm talking about, and the third thing is the next generation of consoles, the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. First, let's talk about Blizzard's culture, because I feel like this is kind of like the biggest factor when it comes to Overwatch's 2 development cycle taking as long as it is. When creating literally anything, whether it's art, food, an essay paper, or in this case a video game, there's really two ways that the project can go. There is rushing the project, not really looking over your mistakes and just trying to get out as fast as possible, and if you make a mistake, oh well, so what, we'll fix it later. Or the latter half, which is what Blizzard always does most of the time with their video games, is taking their time, looking over every single tiny detail, even if it's so insignificant, buffing out every tiny mistake, and making sure that you have a well-polished product at the end of the day. This was the hardest thing for me to understand as a consumer. One, because Overwatch is the only game that I've ever bought at Blizzard, and two, it was hard for me to understand because I don't work at Blizzard. I don't understand when it comes to the process of making a game, which is why I said you will really only understand if you work there. We, the consumers, only see the final product, so we really have to look at the track record of Blizzard when it comes to the initial release of a video game. And when you do that, when you look at Overwatch, when you look at Diablo, when you look at World of Warcraft, StarCraft, all these games that are really, really old with the exception of Overwatch are still loved and enjoyed because of that initial care and polish that was put into the initial development. It's that culture that we will never really understand until we see the final product, but it's so ingrained in Blizzard games that we just kind of expect it to be polished, but we can only get that polish if we give them time, if they have the time necessary to be able to look over every single detail. And if they have that time given to them, we will get a good story when it comes to the campaign of Overwatch 2. We will get new multiplayer game modes and new maps that aren't so buggy and actual trash maps because they're able to look at every single detail when it comes to those things. Whether there was a sickness or not, I think this 7th month period of them not really talking about anything would have happened either way, which is initially why I was so confused, because the marketing for Overwatch 2 is kind of abysmal. And I take good pride in knowing that I know a little bit more than the average person when it comes to marketing, because I graduated college with a degree in marketing. So when I see Blizzard announce Overwatch 2 at 2019 and them have a working build of Overwatch 2 at that same BlizzCon event and them just not talk about it as if it doesn't exist for 7 months, it gets me frustrated because you gotta have something. You can't go 7 months without any substance plans or without a plan. You gotta have hype, you gotta have momentum, you gotta have that build up until that initial release so that you get the max amount of dollars made. And I'm sure the marketing department at Blizzard also knows this. I'm sure someone who's actually a professional marketer also gets this too. But I'm really just genuinely curious as to what the marketing plan looked like to justify that 7-month period without anything. And the more that I talk about it, it's got me thinking, and this is all just speculation, I'm not saying that actually happened, but what I'm thinking is that maybe the marketing department saw the decline of Overwatch sales and they pressured Blizzard to announce Overwatch 2 early at 2019 BlizzCon, because again, that same culture of taking their time, being methodical and being patient, they probably ideally would have liked to announce Overwatch 2 at 2020 BlizzCon because it wasn't ready. There's so many different departments of a business, and in Blizzard, there's marketing, there's business and operations, there's developers, there's IT, there's engineers, there's artists, and I'm sure the people that are actually working on the game want to have as much time as possible, where the marketing department, they want to rush them and say, hey, we gotta have this game out. We don't care how long it takes. And I'm sure that's maybe what happened in this case. But again, I don't know. But I know for one thing is that the culture is still there. Whether it's Overwatch 2, whether it's Diablo 69, like whatever it's gonna be, that slow, methodical development cycle is always gonna be there. But then there's another thing a lot of people would point to, which is another big factor as to why Overwatch 2 is still not here. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the thing that's going on in the world. This is like the obvious, like, oh, that's the reason why. And it's a big reason. It's definitely not the only reason, but you also have to think, like, why is that affecting Blizzard? And at first, my initial thought was it shouldn't affect them, because the people that are working from home are working on a computer like most people, but the people working from home on a computer would also just be working at the Blizzard offices on a computer. So why would that affect Overwatch's 2 development? And for the most part, it hasn't affected Overwatch's 1 development. Like, we still see hero changes, we're still seeing events and skins and whatnot, and they've been doing a really good job. But Overwatch 2 is a different story, and something that I really didn't think about is that the equipment that it takes to make a video game, not balance a video game, make a video game, those employees couldn't take that equipment home with them. Those $20, $30, $50,000 computers to make this video game, they can't take from Blizzard to home. You know, I don't know how big the equipment is, but you gotta think, there are big screens, big computers, big tablets for the artists to draw. They can't take with them home. So I'm sure that's a big reason as to why Overwatch 2 is also slowing down in the development cycle, because, well, the equipment that is needed to work on the game is not in the possessions of the artists. Like, working on a $500 dinky laptop is not the same as working on a $20,000 computer. Just thinking about that makes me have a little chub. Again, I don't work at Blizzard, and maybe the employees that have that expensive heavy equipment were finally able to get it at their house. But you gotta think, that at least affected one person and slowed down the development of Overwatch 2. And then there's a thing that just affects every business, and that is how hard it is to do business over the computer and over the phone. Like, just think of it like this. It's a lot easier to make a video game in person than it is not in person. Being able to talk to your manager that's just over your shoulder, being able to bounce off ideas, being able to have meetings is a lot better to do at the offices than it is over a Zoom call. And that's the second reason as to why I think Overwatch 2 isn't here. But some people, like myself, will probably have the initial thought, okay, but what if there wasn't a sickness? How does that excuse the 7-month period of them announcing Overwatch 2 and then them not having anything? Well, we kind of solved that by talking about the culture and talk about the marketing department and them possibly pressuring them to announce Overwatch 2 when they weren't ready to release it because they take their time with everything. But that's within Blizzard. The third reason as to why I think Overwatch 2 isn't here is involving two other companies, two big companies that are also affected by the thing that's going around the world, and that is the development and the release of PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. Overwatch 2 is gonna be on those consoles, no doubt about it. But is Overwatch 2 gonna be a launch title? I'm sure Blizzard is aiming to be a launch title for those consoles, because when you pick up a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X, you want to have games for it, and if they know that Overwatch is a great game from their reviews or from their past experience, they're gonna pick it up for that console. It makes sense from a marketing standpoint. But does Blizzard even know when the Xbox Series X or the PlayStation 5 is gonna be releasing? Not an exact date. They keep saying the holiday season, the holiday season, the holiday season. Well, when is the holiday season? Well, the holiday season. That's either October, November, or December. And the Xbox One, I think, release at the end of October, early November of 2014. I know it was available on Black Friday, and that makes sense from, again, a marketing standpoint, to release a console before Black Friday, because more than likely, family's gonna go out during Black Friday and buy that console for their kid for Christmas. So more than likely, they're gonna be releasing maybe November, but we don't know. And neither does Blizzard. So how can Blizzard aim to be a launch title if they don't know the exact release date? But that's kind of assuming that Sony and Microsoft isn't working with Blizzard and letting them in the know of their consoles that's going to be releasing later on this year. So if I'm going to be totally honest here, I'm sure there are people at Blizzard that knows the exact date that the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X are going to be releasing, but they're still under the power of Microsoft and Sony, and if they don't feel comfortable releasing their consoles this year, then more than likely they're going to delay it, which means that Overwatch 2 is going to be delayed because they want to release Overwatch 2 alongside those platforms. Or maybe they don't, but you also got to think that Blizzard is working with people at Sony and Microsoft who are working with employees that are working from home. So now we got people at Blizzard and Microsoft and Sony that aren't able to easily work on a video game business. Like, it's really hard. And I'm sure that's also contributing as to why Overwatch 2 isn't here. They don't know what's going on with those consoles. That means they don't know what's going on with Overwatch 2. But I also don't know what's going on with Overwatch 2 at the end of the day, and you also don't know. But we can speculate as to why it's not here and have a little bit more of appreciation for the things that we do know, the culture more importantly. We can't have a fun, well-polished product while also trying to rush Blizzard. And that's why I made this video to, one, hopefully give you a little bit more of appreciation for Blizzard, but for two, to get you to understand and sympathize with what's going on right now. There's a lot going on that's not only affecting Blizzard, but also affecting the rest of the video game world, or just affecting the rest of the world. And hopefully you see it now. But anyway, guys, I love you guys. Thank you guys for watching. And when Overwatch 2 releases, trust me, it'll be fun. It'll be really fun. I love you guys, and bye.